Good morning, good evening, good noontime, good noon 30, good afternoon, good midday, good later day, good night, good midnight, ooh, whatever time of day it is. I want you to know, hey, I'm Lynn Ferguson, and I approve this message. I'm Lynn Ferguson, also known as Lynn Tennyson, your host here on the show, Lynn's Bins. It's a podcast dedicated to Black life in America and all over the world and music. So today, we have a special guest, a scholar, who epitomized Black excellence before the phrase was widely used in the spheres and context that it is today. I want to introduce a brilliantly burning beacon of strength, courage, and sophistication who has instilled those same qualities and a sense of pride within many children of the community of St. Louis, Missouri, and surrounding areas, children who grew to become doctors, lawyers, teachers, and other members of this burgeoning society, partially under her tutelage. She's worked in communal violence, passed legislation, and further studies centering racial tensions and disparities so that she may bring to fruition a better future for the Black, particularly female, community. Program director of the Demetrius Johnson Charitable Foundation, teen outreach coordinator for Greater St. Louis Federation of Settlement Houses and Neighborhood Centers, owner and founder of the Mabili Watoto Academy and Resource Center, Doctor of Education, Behavioral Aspects of Health, with a focus on copacetic methods of Black mothers of children taken through gun violence. Howard graduate with a background in psychology, accounting, health and wellness, and anthropology. Please welcome Dr. Sharon Williams.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you
glad
so
to
much
be
for
here.
being here.
Yes.
No, we're glad to have you here on Lynn's Bins. Well, I want to start this off by asking what led you to the field of social sciences?
Well, I think as a young person, I was interested in talking with people. I was always talking too much in class, of course, and I had a great sense of a need to be around when people needed help. And so I decided as a young girl that I wanted to go into the field of psychology. I actually in high school, I went to Health Careers High School, and I had internships at the Jefferson Barracks, where I worked with the patients there who were on the psych ward. And that led me to my major when I went to college, which was in psychology. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Extensive background. Okay. Well, how did you find your passion for education, and what's your biggest academic feat while we're there?
I think, well, even as a young child, my mother encouraged me to read a lot. We often went to the library when I was younger. I would think I was a only child until I was 6 years old. And so I didn't have anything to do but play with my dolls and read them books. And so I developed a great passion for reading. Back then, we didn't have Kindles or we didn't have the internet to look up things. So we had to go to the library. We had to read books. We had the bookmobiles that came to our neighborhood, and we would get to go on the bookmobile and get books. Even at schools, we would use the bookmobile, and that led to a great need to be educated. I decided when I was in high school that I wanted to join the honors club. I always had excellent grades. I joined Future Business Leaders of America, in which I was the vice president. Then I became the president. When I went off to Howard University, I was a 6-year MD/BS student major. So I was supposed to stay there and do the 8 years in 6 years. I ended up joining the Howard University I guess you want to call it, I guess it's the student body, where I was a freshman, but I became the secretary for the group. And I did a year or two there at Howard, and then I decided to come back to St. Louis, and I finished up my bachelor's here in anthropology and sociology. at the University of St. Louis, Missouri. Yep. After that, I went to Webster where I got a master's in gerontology. And then I went to Grand Canyon where I began my doctoral studies. And that's the extent of my education.
Oh my goodness. Well, you said your mother was a great influence when it comes to your reading. What was when you were a kid around this time that you started really getting into reading? What was your favorite book? And was it fiction or nonfiction?
It, believe it or not, it was Judy Blume. One of my favorite characters. I think she was a young girl like myself, and the lady who wrote, she wrote about young people, wrote about a young girl, and this young girl was very active and did many things. And her books kind of explored the types of things that would be interesting to me, things that I would want to do. And it showed you how to relate to people and how to, get past things. So she became one of my favorite authors when I was young.
Oh, wow. So you read a few things by Judy Blume.
I read almost everything by Judy Blume. Yes, yes. And then when I got to high school, I didn't read as much because I was a teenager. But I always still had a passion for reading and studying. It was only when I got to Howard University where I developed a interest in African American studies. Um, it just so happened to be that I'm from Missouri, and one of my first classes was an anthropology class. It was a Black History class, and the teacher asked me to stand up and tell her about Dred Scott. I had no idea who Dred Scott was. As a 17-year-old from Missouri, I had no idea who Dred Scott was. And so she immediately had me leave the classroom. I had to turn in a 500-word report. My next class, which was in 2 days, on Dred Scott. It led me to the Howard University Library, in which I had to go up in what's called the stacks. And the stacks is where all the literature on African American history was kept at Howard University at the time. So when I went to school there wasn't like internet. There wasn't like, everybody, there was still books, you know, but the books that were more current was downstairs on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the fifth floor, and then the stacks was 6, 7, and 8. And so I had to go up in the stacks. It was hot, it was humid, and I found the books on Dred Scott, and I wrote that essay, and I took it back to school with me on that Thursday, and I was charged to read that essay in class and talk about Dred Scott and how his life uh, related to my very own. And ever since then, I grew a passion for African American studies, and I have a degree in African American studies. I have an
Wow.
associate's degree in that. Yeah.
That's amazing because, I mean, for the viewers who don't know, this is my aunt, Dr. Sharon Williams. So, I did not know that about you. I didn't know that it's so amazing to think about that. The whole time you were explaining this, I was listening, but I was also like thinking about Mabili Watoto and thinking about the West End Center and all of the amazing education that I got before I could even say that I was fully aware of the world and of myself and things like that, let
Yeah.
alone 17. So, like, to know that you instilled that in us and that you came from that background, that's really
Right.
amazing. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Because, like, I grew up
Yeah.
thinking you knew this.
No, and the thing about it is that nobody really knows anything until you're given the opportunity to learn it. And so I wasn't given the opportunity to learn about African American history during my formal years of education, which, now there are plenty of opportunities for young people to learn about African American history, but a lot of them choose not to because there's so many other things that they can be learning about, that. And I know, with computers and AI and all that, it's just not as uh prevalent among young people to learn about their past cultural and history, but it was for me once Howard University opened my eyes to a whole new realm of learning. And you have to know about your past in order to move forward in the future.
Mm, mm, definitely. Well, since we're in academics, what's been your experience as a Black woman within the professional world? So, like, if you want to give us specific examples, what's been your experience as a Black woman within this professional world? And then also, do you feel that you'd be somewhere different than where you are presently? Should that not have affected you the way that it did? Those
Yes.
experiences. So we might be getting into
Um,
like some negative experiences.
yes, we are. Growing up as a young child, I was always dark. I was a dark complexion. And so there's been this thing called colorism in the Black community where it was good to be light. It was good to be very light. It was negative to be dark. And so a lot of my experiences centered around being a dark child, being called names, tar baby, black this or that. And that kind of stuck with me throughout my high school years and into my college years. But it was only when I got to Howard University where I realized that my dark skin and my nose and my lips were were a thing of beauty, and they were to be experienced, and they should be shared and enjoyed. I should enjoy what I have. And I read a poem called Dark Symphony, and that poem has stuck with me forever. And it helped me to realize that beneath the interior that I'm in, there is somebody there worth people getting to know. And the colorism that I experienced, it went with me into not only into the education that I was in my educational life, but also in the business life that I chose after college. Um, they used to have a test called the paper bag test back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s. And the paper bag test was used to determine whether or not African American people could work in a certain set of business. And so back then, mostly women, black women, could work in secretarial jobs back then. And if you were darker than the shade of a paper bag, you couldn't get a job in most places. And that prompted me as I began working on my dissertation to decide when I was deciding what I was going to study. And it was in an organization, it's education and organizational leadership is what my dissertation was in, my doctoral degree in. And I decided that I was going to explore how African American women fared in the business sector of organizations. And the dissertation led me to many articles on how Black women were treated unfairly in organizations, how they were expected to produce more than what other people produced, how they had to change their hair, the way they spoke, their mannerisms, how they didn't get the promotions because of being Black and a woman. And it was very interesting when you went to talk about the pay scales as well, because not only were they affected as women during the pay scale when trying to get achievements in the workplace, but because they were Black women.
Mm,
They were at the end of the totem pole. You were a woman for being one thing, and to be Black, that's another thing.
mm,
And then to be dark, that was a third thing on top of it.
mm,
And so it was interesting doing the study and doing the interviewing of women while I was doing the practical part of my dissertation. And I learned a lot from these women, and I learned how deep rooted this colorism is in our world, and also just also being a woman. I use intersectionality as one of my theories, and it helped me to understand how uh, these different being a woman, being black, and being dark, how they connected, and how you had to align yourself so that you could fit in and achieve your goals. And
Mm-hmm.
it hasn't changed much in this day and age. Although black women have are becoming, more I guess prominent in the business world, not so much in Fortune 500 companies, but in other sects like in politics, in medicine and things in education. Yeah.
Wow. One thing you mentioned is being dark. And I wonder, what do you think about and how that affected your experience and how that affects, Black women's experience? It's not just a matter of you're a woman. It's not just a matter of you're a Black woman. It's particularly a matter of you are a dark skinned Black woman that is going to affect, if you are a dark skinned Black woman, your trajectory,
Yeah.
longitudinally, your wages, your jobs. I wonder if you can tie this into the Green Lantern controversy. I don't know if you've heard about it, but there is a new Green Lantern movie, or excuse me, TV series that's being shown or debuted soon. And they are featuring a lighter skinned Green Lantern. And I'll be honest with you, as a woman who was born in 1994, who grew up with Justice League, the cartoon, I know that the comics and that the original cartoon had a dark skinned Black man. So I'm more than a bit enraged about this. And I just don't know. Some people are arguing, I'll give you this and then I'll give you the floor. Some people are arguing that this is okay. Some Black people, some dark skinned Black people, are arguing that this is okay because there are not enough light skinned Black men in particular who are these, super EGOT actors, who are these, A-list actors. Most of them are dark skinned people. You think of Denzel Washington, you think of Blair Underwood, if we're going back there. You think of more recently Samuel L. Jackson, Kevin Hart, things like that. So, do you think that that's a valid argument? What do you think about the Green Lantern controversy and them casting a lighter skinned man to play Green Lantern?
Well, when we talk about men and women, dark men and women, there's a real big difference. Because you're black, first being a woman, that was a no-no, and then being a Black woman, a dark-skinned Black woman, was even worse. When you talk about dark-skinned men, and you think about the characters that these men had to play, and when we talk about in the movies and stuff, they played slaves, they played thugs, they played housekeepers, they played trash men, and these were not considered quote unquote uh jobs that light skinned Black men were doing. And the lighter you were, the better your chances of getting a job doing something else. Those roles that were specifically set up, they were set up for those mammy type roles. And they would cast dark men in them. And that was to always show the significance, or to keep Black men downtrodden. They were downtrodden, and they were always dark, and the lighter skinned men were able to move up and do other things and even pass as white.
Mm-hmm.
So you saw these roles given to dark men as opposed to light skinned men.
Mm-hmm.
As we go forward in time, you could see how the roles started changing and how the lighter the black men became, how lighter black men, became in different roles. And so you start seeing them as working in offices, working in medicine, working, doing with other light skinned black women, in roles.
Attorneys.
Right, attorneys. You see them in those roles. You wouldn't see black dark skinned men in those roles because they always have to keep us downtrodden in some type of ways. Yeah. And so I see that as being a form of colorism as well. Yep.
Well, I thank you. I thank you because that is how I feel about it too. And I really was a bit confused. I was taken aback by people making that argument because I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, look, this is colorism no matter what way you look at it. We're not going to pretend that, you know, dark skinned black men have not been pigeonholed into certain roles
Yes.
for the longest, and light
Yeah.
skinned people, especially light skinned men, have been put in certain other roles that are supposed to be, dichotomous, supposed to make up this dichotomous,
Right.
standard.
Yeah. And I
Um,
mean, this was the same for black women. Black women, when they began, and you see them in roles, they were housekeepers. They were low class nurses, they
mhm.
caretakers, babysitters, mammies, and then the lighter they
Lighter you
became,
were.
the lighter you were, the better roles you got.
It's the same
Work,
thing for men. It's the
working in
same
an
thing for women.
office, right? It's the same thing, and that's how society has been built. I mean, we went from slavery to this, you know, trying to fit in into a world that never meant for us to be in.
Mm, mm. What's your personal connection to Moms Demand Justice, or excuse me, Moms Demand Action? And could you explain to the audience what that is?
Yeah. So my son, my oldest son was killed in 2008, and I was devastated by his death. I started my own organization, Save Our Children from the Street, and it was to help mothers who had lost their children to gun violence. When I lost my son to gun violence in 2008, there weren't a lot of organizations around that were working with people who had lost loved ones to gun violence, especially losing a black child or a black son to gun violence, because quote unquote they were the bad seeds, and because you lost one or you lost two, it didn't really matter. It was hey, that took that person out of society. And so the doctors weren't really treating people for this type of trauma as well back then. So it was hard trying to find somebody, um, a doctor that would treat me, or a psychologist that knew what I was going through. And there weren't any really organizations that were dealing with this. And so I started my organization. Well, as the years went on, more and more black men and black women began being killed in the streets by gun violence and suicide. And I decided at one point that there was only so far I could take my organization. And I decided that in order to get what I needed to get this into the hands of those people who don't normally see what people like me go through, I needed to become part of that. And I joined Moms Demand Action. And Moms Demand Action was an organization under Everytown that dealt with gun sense laws. It dealt with the violence. It dealt with gun sense laws and how to change those laws. But as time went on in this organization, they saw that they needed to move in a different direction, in which they started dealing with people who have been affected by gun violence, because Moms Demand Action was really an organization for those people who were white, who lived out in areas that weren't really affected by the gun violence, but they didn't want it to come to their neighborhoods. And so they got out there and they started doing things to prevent it, changing laws to prevent it from happening in their neighborhoods. And so now with the St. Louis City group, local group, in which I am one of the co-chair. I'm the co-group leader in the St. Louis City group of Moms Demand Action. I go out and I talk to people about gun violence. I help to lobby for gun sense laws that make sense. And I also am part of the Survivor Network through Moms Demand Action, which means that I work with people who have lost loved ones to gun violence. And I help to bring them into our organization and show them a way to deal and cope with the loss that they were experienced.
It's amazing. That is really good. So you do lobbying, public speaking, network inception for the group and with the
Yeah,
group,
yes,
and you're the
yes, I'll do that.
co-leader.
Yep,
Hmm.
co-leader of our St. Louis group. We recently were given a honor. We do a day in June called Wear Orange, and Wear Orange is for where you celebrate. Well, you don't celebrate, but you honor those who lost their lives to gun violence. It started out of the young girl in Chicago who attended Obama's and his one of his meetings. He was lobbying up there to become president, and she, after attending that, a couple of days later, about a month later, was killed in one of the parks up there. Yes, she was killed, and so this Wear Orange Day was dedicated in her honor. Yeah. Also through Moms Demand
Wow.
Action, this summer in June, I was given a honor by Moms Demand Action at our national convention. And
Oh
it
my
was for all the
goodness.
organizing and lobbying that I've been doing. Our organizing manager here in Missouri presented me with an award at the national convention. So I was one of three people in the whole United States to get that award.
My goodness, one of three people.
Yes.
I gotta put that in my notes. No, definitely. No, I'm gonna add that to my description of the episode. This is amazing. Congratulations on the award.
Thank you.
Um, I want to know, how exactly do you propose that we end violence in our communities?
Oh, it's just hard. While working with Demetrius Johnson, who is now passed away, I learned a lot from him because he would say, it's the people that you make and the connections that you have that move you further along the path to achieving goals. It's not about money. you know it's about who you know, and your networking of those people that you have, which helps you to achieve the things that you want. And that's so true, because I've learned that in working with Moms Demand Action, I've got to know so many people that I probably never would have known had I not joined this organization, because I didn't travel in their circles. I didn't travel around in the circles where rich white people from Chesterfield lived, or prominent people from Kirkwood lived, or
Mhm.
politicians. I didn't travel in those circles. And so with this organization, I've been able to move in different circles and tell them how I feel about gun violence, tell them my story, and also to begin to shed light on gun violence, and a face that they don't normally see as someone who has experienced gun violence. They didn't expect to see a black educated woman lose a son to gun violence. I should have been. That's not the normal. It should have been the drug infected mother who didn't take care of her children, who had her son running on the streets, who he never had a father in his life. Those are the people that they expect to see, lose their life to gun violence. So I wasn't the typical person to lose a son to gun violence. And it opened the doors because I was able to speak to these people and tell them about my story without having them put a stigma on it. So they got to see a different face of gun violence. And also with Moms Demand Action, I bring that information that I learned back to our community, because in our community, in our Black communities where we live, we have become so downtrodden with trying to end gun violence, to keep our young people from being killed, to keep ourselves safe, that we really don't think about the gun laws that need to be changed in order to make it a better and safe place. And so I
Hmm.
always encourage people at our meetings, I encourage our Black people in our community to start lobbying, to start thinking about the gun violence, start talking to their legislators, talk to their alder people, talk to the mayor, learn what it takes to change a gun law, because Missouri doesn't really have any gun laws. And that is a big detriment on the Black community, where there's so
It
much
is.
gun violence and killing amongst young people.
It is. Well, you actually kind of veered into the lane of the next question I want to ask. What is your election advice for the Black community?
Woo, election is a touchy subject. Uh, I try not to give advice on elections, but I have opinions about it. And it's wonderful. It was wonderful to be a part of Barack Obama. I actually went out and did some campaigning from him when he was running, and he became our first African American president, male president, and he had 2 terms. And now we have a Black woman that's running for president. And there's still, even though she's a Black woman and she's running, there was controversies around him running for president, and there's controversies around her running for president. And I just think that people have to make their own choices about what they believe and who they believe in. Um, Not one candidate is going to be able to give everybody or say what everybody wants them to hear, you know, and that's I think that would be a mistake for a candidate to try to do. I think what they have to do is keep an open mind about different things. Don't get themselves pigeonholed into 2 or 3 or 4 things, but keep your mind open to the different things that other people are interested in, what the libertarians are interested in, what the Green Party is interested in, what people who don't consider nationalists. Keep your mind open, and don't just shut people down because it's not your party, that they're interested in. But keep, even Republicans, if you're Democratic, keep your mind open, to what because you may bring them into your realm or learn something that may help you to get them, on board, so that we can all begin to work together.
Definitely, definitely. I like that. I like that advice. So I know, or at least I believe I got this right. You got your psychology degree through Howard, right?
Actually, I got my psychology degree. I started at Howard and I started at Georgetown. I did both of those schools together, Georgetown University. And then I finished at UMSL. I finished at UMSL with
Oh,
a right. Yeah, so I got actually got a African I got an associate degree in African American studies, and I was a dual major. So I had degrees in sociology and anthropology.
oh my goodness. Yeah, I got that in here. Definitely. I just got it a little mixed up. I'm wondering, in that time that you were with Howard, what do you think what would you describe the Howard experience as? And do you feel that Black students should primarily aim to attend HBCUs? And for those who don't know, that's historically Black colleges and universities.
Um, as a kid growing up, back then in the 70s and 80s, we had magazines. We had access to the internet, so we had magazines. And the one
Ebony.
magazine that I know came to the house all the time was the Ebony magazine. And the Ebony magazine was something that I look forward to each month coming out. And they would all one of the editions towards April or May would always have Howard would have the beauty queens from all the Black historical colleges on it. And so I remember looking at that magazine and looking at all the beauty queens and thinking, oh, hey, I could go to one of those HBCUs and, I could become one of the beauty queens at the school or homecoming queen. And it sparked my interest as to looking in to see what what was happening at these colleges, what was so special about the colleges. And in my research during my junior year, I began to learn about different things like Booker T. Washington, and, Langston Hughes, and James Baldwin, and where they attended school, and all the Black people who had went to these prominent schools, not didn't because they didn't have a choice. They couldn't go to the other schools. They had to go to these schools because that was the only they weren't accepted into the white universities. So they had to go to these schools in order to graduate and get a degree. And so I decided that I wanted to go to HBCU. Can't even get it right now. I wanted to go there. And I also had options to go to St. Louis University because we were Catholic and my mother had gone there. I could have gone there as well. And I had a scholarship through Washington University. Didn't have one through Howard because I didn't apply for a scholarship through Howard. And so at the very end, like right before I graduated, I got accepted. And I told my mother, I'm going to go. I got to go. I have to go become a part of history. I want to go to this historical college. I got to go. And I ended up getting there. And it was amazing because this is where the foundation was laid for who I am today. I met so many teachers who espoused that Black experience, who talked about the past, who were trying to bring us into the future. I met Black students from all over the world, not only from just America, but from all over the world, who shared their experience from being in different countries, Benin, and coming from Jordan, and coming from the United Kingdom. Slavery put us everywhere. And these people were coming back to this historical college, they call it the Mecca, and bringing everything that they had with them, soaking up all the aura on this magnificent campus, and then taking it back with them when they left to spread to other people. And so for me, attending a historical Black college was an eye-opener. It helped me to get over the colorism that I was experiencing. It helped me to see a different side of society, because there was, and it's in every race that you go in, there's this class system. And so the students that attended Howard were from this upper class mostly of people. And so it was another experience for me. I wanted my kids, when they grew up, to go to college. I would have loved for them to go to a historical Black college. And I think for young people today, because of where we are in society, if you choose to go to a historical Black college, that's great. If you don't, then that's great as well. But I encourage all the students and everybody that I ever work with as young people to always look back on your heritage. Find something that you can connect with in your past that culturally brings you along, so that you know of your history, that you know of the past, you know of the shoulders from which you're going to be standing. Because you didn't get there. You're not going to get, you didn't, we didn't get here by ourselves. We stand on the shoulders of all the other greats, no matter where we are, and those people laid the path, because they couldn't attend, though. They didn't have the opportunity to attend Yale, Penn State, St. Louis University. They didn't have that, and so those opportunities. And so to have those opportunities is wonderful, but don't forget, take some Black history classes wherever you are. Learn about these historical Black colleges, because that's something that it they're gonna need, and people say they don't, but you will need it in the business world. You need that. You need to know a lot about different things, not only about Harvard, but you need to learn about Howard. You need to learn about Clark Atlanta, Morehouse, all these people who have gone there before us, and how great they have become. So yeah, I will encourage people who want to go, but I don't say don't go to another school if that's your choice.
It's a good perspective. Well, aside from your, of course, your late son's, is there a murder or injustice that really moved you to get involved in betterment work in the community?
Yeah, there was working with the gang abatement center in St. Louis. I'm Catholic, of course. I'm Catholic, and our church was the site of a program that started called Caring Communities. And Caring
And what was that?
Communities,
Karen?
caring,
Oh,
caring,
okay.
caring communities, and it was started by a guy named Khatib Wahid. And Khatib had a vision for bringing social services directly in our community, so that we had people that look like us who help to bring social services to us. Oftentimes, we would go to the social service office, welfare office, and there would be these, different other races sitting behind the desk who didn't quite understand our past. And so he felt as though to have some people that looked like us in the community, who knew about the community, who lived and worked in the community, will help to will help us to better understand each other and help these people to move along. So they provided a gang abatement center, which I took over, called the Teen Center. And then he has satellite centers in which they provided social services, food. They would help people get food, clothing, learn how to type, learn how to uh, read documents. They did a lot of different things with his satellite uh, buildings. And it just so happened that when my nephew Christian Ferguson came up missing, which was another that changed the course of my direction of things. I left my job working for Girls Incorporated to help my sister look for her son. And that opportunity of working with Caring Communities left me available to help her, while I was also working in the teen center. And my mother and my father were both very involved in community activism, especially my mom, because my mother worked with the church for a while, and she became a pastoral care associate. And then they both joined this organization called the Knights of Peter Claver. And within the Knights of Peter Claver, they also did work that involved taking care of the community. And so, following in their footsteps, I joined the Peter Clavers, and with all these different organizations that I was involved with, it helped me to decide working in the community is where I wanted to be. And it changed the course of my life. Losing my son put me on another trajectory, one that I didn't want to be there, but because of the circumstances, this is where it led me. So we often think we, want to grow up and this is where we're going to be and this is what we want to do, but circumstances may change that course. And so the circumstances of losing my son, my nephew being missing, and the fact that I took over this gang abatement center, working with young people in the community, it changed my trajectory of where I wanted to do and what, where I was wanted to go originally and what I was going to do.
Well, with all of these things that you've been doing within the community, I know you mentioned that your mother and your father were very active, and
Hmm.
I know grandma has been so active in the community. But with everything that you've been doing within the community, uh, what do you do to fight burnout or activism fatigue, if you will?
Uh-oh. Did I do that? Okay. Um, I over the years, have started, well, I'm an education buff, so I'm always doing something educationally, always doing something as far as advancing myself or helping to advance others. But I think one thing that I began to do is work with elderly people because I have a master's in gerontology. And so I have been working with the elderly for the last 8 or 9 years now, 6 or 7 years now, in different capacities in the community. In particular, here at Homer G. Phillips, it was one of the great Black hospitals in St. Louis where mostly Black doctors that were trained here. It's where my mother, your grandmother, was born and worked here, and now we both live here. And I find it rewarding to help these people to find confidence in fighting for their rights, as seniors, amongst the management company here. Um, and now that I am towards that age where I would be moving into a senior place because I'm 58 now, I see the people from my generation who were uh, addicted to crack, addicted to drugs, coming through. They've lived some harsh lives, and they're bringing those different substance abuses with them into our community, you know. And so it's hard to see people that you grew up with, and you knew, had been out. You never knew what happened to them, and then find out that they became part of that crowd that got hooked on crack, or lost their babies to the system because they were, on crack. And so community activism is how I spend my time. Um, Even though it's a lot of work, it's rewarding for me. And I've also taken up traveling. I'm becoming a cruise buff now. I'm getting ready to go on
Oh,
my third cruise next year.
oh,
I've traveled.
you're gonna have to give me some pointers. You're gonna have to give me some pointers.
Yes, I went on my first cruise to the Bahamas. And then the second cruise, I went the Bahamas and the Cayman Islands. And then last year we were on this year we went to Mexico. So I went to Cabo San Lucas, and I went, yes, yes, yes. So we're planning our next cruise, and we don't know if we want to go to Hawaii or if we're trying to go up north to Canada. So we're trying to make that decision now. But this
You
is
want
this
to go to Hawaii. You want to
yes.
go Hawaii.
I think that's going to be the choice, and I think, oftentimes we sit back and we wait until we kind of accumulate the amount of money, or that, to say, oh, I got enough money now, I can travel. By the time you accumulate enough money, you're going to be too old or too sick to travel. So you need to do things sparingly, while you can do them. And while my health is still pretty good, I've had some setbacks. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to travel. I'm going to keep doing my activism, and I'm going to keep promoting education amongst my young people and adults.
I love to hear it. Who has been a role model or was a role model for you when it comes to change and activism?
Oh boy, there's been so many. Well, first my mother, because she was, I first saw her as an activist with caring communities. She was kicking in doors, doing drug marches with caring communities, and so she was kind of like my first role model with that. But another role model I had was Maya Angelou. Even though she was a poet, she was also a activist, and she wrote one of my favorite book. I don't know why the cage bird sings, and I have read that book so many times. Uh, and each time I read it, there's always something that I didn't catch before. There's so much symbolism in there, and so many connections that you can, make. And I make with my own life when I read that book. And I think I actually met her at a bookstore, Barnes and Noble. Her and Alice Walker were together doing a book tour, and I met both of them one after the other. And I got a book signed. I don't know how the cage bird sing signed, and I got the Color Purple book signed. And I have kept them all these years. All these years I've kept them. Yeah.
My goodness.
So
By both of them?
by both of them, yeah. And it's not unusual for Black people in our community who are prominent to take on that role of activism, because it's always say, when you get to the top, you got to reach back and pull other people up. And so a lot of our our Black actors actually come from our educators, our actors, our people who are leaders in our social worlds. They become our activists, promoting different things. And so I would say that the two of those have been role models of mine.
For sure. Well, I just got a few more questions for you. What are your thoughts regarding reparations? And do you believe that to be a good avenue for making progress in all of the fields within which you research, activate, do activism and study?
Yes, I remember one time I was in New York doing a conference, and I was where was it? I was taking a train to this site where they were going to be doing this tribute to Malcolm X. Oh, they were going to be doing this tribute to
I heard
Malcolm
it.
X. I know. Doing this tribute to Malcolm X, and so yeah, I ran into this group that was there, and they were promoting this book or this organization, 40 Acres and a Mule. And that company is run by Spike Lee. 40 Acres and a Mule is run by Spike Lee. That's his company.
Come on, director. Director Spike Lee.
And so
Huey P. Newton story used to have it on DVD.
hello. if you know anything about the reparations, things that were promised us, we were promised 40 acres and a mule. 40 acres and a mule is what we should have been given as reparations for the for our ancestors being in slavery. And I believe that's what
according to
Spike.
German, according to General Sherman Williams.
Right. And so Spike Lee actually named his production company 40 Acres and a Mule. And I went to this place where these people were going to be meeting, and he just happened to be there speaking with a number of other people on reparations in America. And I've always thought that we should be due these reparations that should be given us. Other nationalities have gotten reparations. It seems that when it comes to giving African Americans the reparations, there's always some but clause in it. And one clause that I heard was that it's hard to tell who's African American now because there's so many other black people in the country. Who are the true authentic African Americans? How do we prove that we are the descendants of slaves when there's so many other black people who have come to the country? And I don't think it's that hard to do myself, but
It's not.
that's what's one of the arguments that's been made about giving us reparations. When I found out 20 years ago that we still have to be voted on as citizens in this country,
Every 20 years.
that changed my whole outlook on how the democracy is set up in this country. So originally, this wasn't set up for us. We were supposed to be perpetual slaves in this country. And even though they say that we've been given our civil rights and liberties, we're still not free. We still don't have reparations. And I think as the years go by, they're starting to gravitate towards this we're sorry that it happened, slavery, and we're going to do some certain things to try to make up for it, like these colleges where slaves worked and built are now allowing African Americans to maybe go to school for giving them scholarships and things like that, and doesn't make reparations go, that we want our reparations, but they're trying to find ways in order to, I think, make us really forget about it myself.
Yeah, to mitigate it, and
Right.
to like you said, make us forget about it. I always cringe when I hear that excuse that you gave earlier that a lot of people like to use about we don't know who is who
Hmm.
and we don't know about people's ancestry. That is so dumb
Right.
because there are people in this country like me and you who are able to trace our lineage back, not
Right.
only through ancestry, but through actual documentation that we already know about in
Right.
our cities, in our hometowns, in our states. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like we have documentation that goes back for these generations,
Right. And we are
especially family.
historians. We are
Hello.
the historians of our history. When we came
Well,
over from Africa on boats, we brought what we knew with us from Africa. And so we are the keepers of our history. They're what they call griots. They kept the history. And our histories are told through stories. And these stories have been passed down through generations. And we've kept those stories alive because we initially couldn't write in this country. We couldn't read in this country. So the only thing we could do was tell the people and tell our kids all these stories from our past and have them pass those stories down to each other. And so we are the
that
history keepers.
And you're so right about that. And I think that and I think that's just an amazing feat. I'm glad you pointed that out because, for us to be able to say that as a people, we have continued, despite the active oppression and whitewashing of our history, the active attempts to whitewash our history, and we still know where we come from. We still make certain and pass that information down. That's amazing. But one thing that I'm thinking about is they kind of try to trip us up with the whole don't know about the ancestry thing, but it's like because they try to make us think about how we can prove our ancestry when really all we need to think about is how we can disprove other people's ancestry. I mean, let's be real about it. If we're looking at the Voting Rights Act, excuse me, uh, right before the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that allowed for a lot of these other people who are not Latin, who are not Native, who are not Black or white to come to this country. So if we think about that being passed just a few decades ago, then anybody who's in this country longer than that would clearly be, who's Black, would clearly be a descendant of enslaved people. So, I mean, it's not difficult. Like, it's not like people have been living in this country from other places all over the world and immigrating to this country who are Black for a long time. The Black people have only been allowed to come over here from other places for the past 50, 60 years. So let's be real, Yeah.
Yep, but they do. There's always something about to keep us from getting to what we want, and
Oh, yeah, a
don't even
study. Oh, well, yeah,
right,
we should just do a study.
right,
This,
yeah,
that, and the third. It's like we
yeah.
study. And it's so funny when you think about it. I mean, honestly, one of the things that you said earlier when responding to this question is that every other group has gotten their reparations. Something I had to keep quiet about that I wanted to say in that moment is including groups of people who enslaved us. Jewish people. Jewish people have gotten reparations and still get them to this day, and we pay that. And I think that's something that also is a great argument for reparations as well, that I included in some of my research because that's my field of study over here at university. One thing that I want to point out is just the fact that these almost every case, even across different countries, Black people have paid for our freedom. People make it seem as though we are given freedom. White people just set us free. Black people have fought for our freedom and died for our freedom time and time again, before, during, and after the Civil War, and even outside of this country. One thing that people don't realize is that just in 2015 or 16, that was the final year that citizens of the UK stopped paying white people for slavery, for abolishing slavery. There was a tax that was imposed on the UK citizens for the ending of slavery in order for white people to be compensated for slavery. The amount was so great that they couldn't pay for it all at once. So they had to pay it over the course of 200 plus years. So people in the UK, Black people, have been paying for their former slaves for their freedom, but people say we don't deserve reparations.
I
But
mean, we paid this country was built. This country was birthed off the backs of Black people. Black
mhm,
women birthed this country. And when I say
mhm,
birthed this country, Black women were having babies in record numbers in order to till the fields, in order to build houses, build the White House, build all the train tracks. That's why they had breeding farms for
mm,
black people.
say
Breeding
that.
farms to breed human beings.
Yes.
And they kept bringing us over here, and they kept breeding us and then when they couldn't bring us back over here, they started breeding us themselves. The masters was having with Black women to breed lighter skinned babies to sell at a higher price for them. This country is horrendous, and the things
Horrendous.
that African Americans have gone through in this country has it doesn't it's not put out enough for people to understand what we've actually gone through. It's kind of being pushed to the wayside. It's like, oh, okay, get over it. It happened. Now you're equal with us. We'll never be equal with you. Never.
We
We'll
won't,
never be
even when we
equal
get
with
reparations. And
you. Right.
that's the thing that I think people don't seem to understand is that what has been done to Black people is so, as you said, horrendous that even if we were given reparations immediately upon the abolition of slavery, and we never went through Jim Crow, even if we never went through Jim Crow, it still wouldn't account for what we went through with slavery
That's right.
alone.
The wealth in
Let
this country
alone
came from slavery. The wealth in this country came from slavery. Slavery is how this country was built. That's how this country got built. There was nothing. There was nothing. They brought slaves over. They tilled the land. They did cotton. They did all these things slaves had to do. They had to invent all these different things to use. The cotton gin, all these things that they had to do in order to work. They did these. They built these things. The different patents that went out. They couldn't even if they developed something, they couldn't hold the patent because Black people couldn't get patents. So the white people had to get the patents. They took over.
which is why we have so many white people who are inventors and listed as
And
the
all
inventors.
this money, this wealth in this country, that's slave money.
And not just this country, the 5 richest countries in the world, same thing. Italy,
Same thing.
France,
Yeah.
Germany, Spain, and America.
Look how they went over to Africa and divided up Africa. They went over to Africa, took over from these people that lived there until that land, all these different Black people in these different groups. They went over there and they took over Africa.
Mm.
So in Africa, that's why you have people who speak French. You have people who speak Spanish. You have people Sierra Leone. That's Sierra Leone in Africa. They went over there.
Africa.
They divided. They went over there. They set somewhere up in Canada, whatever, and they decided, oh, we're gonna take over Africa. And so they went over there and they started bringing in guns. They started doing all these other things and getting our people to help them take over.
Mm.
And they took over the land. And we're just now at this point right now starting to get the land back into the hands of those people who were originally there in the first place.
Yeah. And there are artifacts from the museums in Europe.
Else. Right. Africa is the richest continent on the earth. Africa is the only continent on the earth that does not have to get anything from anywhere else.
That's why all of the major diamond jewelers,
diamonds, oil, all that, they take everything from Africa. All these big corporations have investments in Africa because they're still milking the land. They're still taking from them.
It's so funny because, I mean, it's not funny at all, but, it's one of those things. It's just something else when you think about it. And it's actually the reason that I'm making a Black anime titled Strange Fruit of the Ebony. And it compares the ebony tree and how that was exported all over the world for royal desires. They wanted to make some of the richest furniture, some of the most expensive furniture that you could have gotten was made with dark ebony wood, rich dark ebony wood. And it's just like in the show that I'm making, I'm comparing that to how we were exported and still are exported as ebony people. And all of the things, all of the fruits of our labor that are reaped while we are consistently put to work for the benefit of someone else. It's consistent.
They took all our artifacts, shaved the noses off of different things, whitewashed everything, pretended that it came from other places. And this very day, there are relics that are in Europe and everything that they're just now starting to give back to Africa. And it's only because the people in Africa have now began to branch
Mhm.
out, get their education from all these, and bring it back to their country. And they want,
Yes.
we want all our stuff back. You know, I believe personally that reparations will be paid to those people in Africa before we even get ours here in America. Oh, they're gonna get theirs. They're gonna get
Yeah,
theirs. You
because
know,
they have autonomy. The only thing that they need right now is to take that autonomy and to do
autonomy
something with
back.
it.
That's right. That's all they need.
We still need our autonomy
We
because
still
we're still
trying to
seeing
fight for it.
they can
Right.
they can still group us together with other Americans and not
Yeah.
recognize
Yeah.
us
And
specifically as Black people.
slavery was a harsh thing for African Americans. We're still living in the remnants of slavery here. Because as a people, we still can't come together. They separated us by color, skin color, class, and they octagons, and they made us think that these people, because they were light, were better. These people were darker. They separated
Blue
us,
bloods.
right, to the fact where we started separating our own selves and
And
thinking
we
we
still
were
do.
better than each other. And we have not been able to get ourselves back together. And here it is, 2024. And we're still separate as a people. We are actually, African Americans are almost the lowest population, I think, other than Asian in this country.
What do you mean,
We are
Lois?
only like 11, we're only like 11 to 12% are African Americans in the black.
Favorite
And,
Black history,
okay.
favorite piece of Black history, favorite figure in Black history, and
Okay.
favorite film.
Um, my favorite figure in Black history is, it has to be Langston Hughes. Um, I became one of with all his poetry. I'm an artist. I do art, and I think when I was taking courses at Howard University, I had a Black anthology class, and in that anthology class, we talked about all the Black writers. And I believe that one of his, I believe it's Langston Hughes that wrote the poem "Life Ain't No Crystal Stair."
Yes,
And
yes, I know that for a fact.
that's one of my favorite poems. And it changed my perspective on a lot of things because as a young person, you think that that if you do the right thing, that you're automatically going to get to a level of achievement. And so often that's not the case, because of all the other aspects that in your way of becoming who you want to become or what you want to become. And so when he said life ain't no crystal stair, you know, there's going to be cracks in it, there's going to be, you know, you have to learn how to deal with these types of things, especially as a Black person in America. And sometimes it does call for you to code switch, turn it on, turn it off, learn how to live in two worlds per se. You live in that world where you have to move up in the ranks. And so you have to talk a certain way, act a certain way to get your point, to get what you need to move forward. And then in the other world, you have to be accepted there, you know, because if you become too uppity, then they're going to call you out on it. Our people will call you out on it. Okay. And so you have to learn how to your navigate yourselves in two different worlds, as Black people on the rise. And I think that poem set the tone for how I look at things today. My favorite movie, Black movie, it's always going to be The Color Purple, of course.
Yes,
Because and not because it's the color purple. It's because of the symbolism and the connection that uh, it symbolizes some things in my own life that I experienced at Sealy. And I can um trying to think of the word I'm trying to use. I can place myself in her shoes in many different avenues of different, where she was, and not to go on and, put all my business out. But yeah, I see myself in her character a lot. And a lot of people say, well, that's just silly. That's silly. Sealy had a strength that was from within after everything that she had been through. There was this inner strength that she had to live through in order to be the person that she was in the end. And I think Fantasia, who has played Celie twice now, said that when she played Celie one time, it took so much from her. It took it out of her because she really didn't understand it at the time. She was so young. And then when they asked her to do it again, she said, "No, I don't want to do it because I don't want to revisit that hurt." She didn't want to revisit that same hurt that she felt when she was playing Silly, the same thing that mirrored her life. And then she started not to take the role. But as time went on and Oprah talked to her and the guy that actually produced The New Color Purple talked to her, then she was able to see where she could utilize what she learned playing Celie the first time and what she has learned in her own life to move into this next role of being Celie. And she was so grateful that she got to play that role again because now that she's older, she took everything that she had learned from the past and was able to put it into that role, And so I see the Black experience in America as an experience that all Black people have to experience because we're Black. But we all don't experience the same thing being Black. We have some of the same issues because we're Black, being Black. But we all have different experiences of being Black.
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's really true.
yeah, I think that's, that movie and that poem and that author, Maya Angelou, set the tone for my life and who I wanted to be. And I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still evolving. I'm still changing. I still am eager for education. I'm eager to help people. I want to make sure that I leave a mark on this world, and I don't want to leave any stones unturned. I want to make sure that I can get as much as I can, from this experience. And I just happen to be Black, and my experience is going to come from the Black experience.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I just got two more questions for you. The second last one is, do you think that there's a disconnect between the younger and older generations that thwarts progress in the Black community? And what do you think could close that chasm?
Yeah. Well, yes, I do. And I think being in youth development for over 35 years, um I was a young person at 16 or 17 when I started working with youth, with 4-H. We had a 4-H club. A lady on my block had a 4-H club, and I started working with her, with the youth on our block, working with young people. My babysat, for people. And I think as I decided to begin to work, and it was actually in the corporate world, I saw that the things that I had learned socially didn't fit into the corporate world. I wasn't fulfilled in the corporate world. And so I came out of the corporate world and went into youth development, working with Girls Inc. And Girls Inc. opened up the door to other ways to work with young people in the many organizations and capacities that I worked with. And in working with young people, We have to be able to be adaptable. We have to be able to meet them where they're at. We have to understand what they're going through. And we can't tell them, oh, you're not going through anything because you haven't lived a life long enough to know anything. They go through things. They go through things, and some of them have been through some things that I haven't been through. And so, in order to work with young people, you have to be open to understanding what they go through and not shut them out because you think that they don't know what they're talking about. Some of our older generation are not open to new experiences that have come with this young generation. Is it Generation Z or what is it now? What's the newest generation? Uh, the
The
newest.
newest one, I think the newest one is Alpha, but they're still kids. None of them are
Okay,
adults yet. Alpha.
okay.
So Gen
So
Z are the young adults.
Gen Z. Okay, so Gen Z. So yeah, we have to leave that door open and understand, And so I think one of the ladies here was having her 63rd birthday party, and she invited me to her birthday party, and I'm 58, and I connect more with what's going on Facebook, and I look at the TikTok sometimes, so I kind of know some of the dances and some of the songs that the kids are doing. And so she had her grandkids here and her daughter, and so they were playing some music, and one of the songs was turn the light on or something. And then just when you take your cell phone and you take your cell phone, you put the light on the person and they dancing and all that. So when I got up and took off my jacket and I turned my cell phone to put the light on, all her grandkids ran over to me. Oh, oh. They just couldn't believe that this old lady was doing this. And she the next day, a couple of days later, she said, "Oh my God, my grandkids, they love you. They got videos of you." I'm like, videos, destroy them. And she said they said they couldn't believe they said they couldn't believe you was doing the dances that they was doing. And I said, well, I've always been able to connect with kids, some type of way. And I pride myself on being able to um, keep the doors open, keep the communication open, and try to understand, the things that they're dealing with. Although we didn't have to deal with a lot of those things growing up, the things that they deal with are true things that they have to deal with. And so we have to start researching, Googling, looking at, watching what they're doing in order to communicate with them. And so, until we can get the older generation, and people my age and maybe a little younger than me, to start moving those needles closer together, then we won't be able to close that gap. I think it's closing a little bit now because you have parents who can interact with their kids, on Facebook. They're doing TikToks with their grandkids and TikToks with their kids, and so this social media that we have is actually bringing that gap a little closer, you know. But we also have to remember that there are going to be people who don't want to use social media, you know. And I think by not using social media, they're missing out on some things because that's where the young people are. Hmm.
Honestly, it is. It is. It is where the young people are, where they congregate. Although I did see a news special yesterday about kids who are turning off, they're deleting
Hmm.
their social media, and they're going out in the park and like doing things all over. Like the older
Like they used
generations and
to,
stuff.
right? That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And
Right.
I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's a cool movement.
Yeah.
I think they're calling them. I think they call it the ludist
Lotus.
movement, ludist,
Okay.
which harkens back to when the Industrial Revolution was starting, and a lot of
Okay.
people didn't want the Industrial Revolution, so
Right.
they called them ludists because they didn't they were okay with progress, but they didn't want too much progress too quickly.
Right. Yeah, and I can see that, happening because I mean, social media is a great place to be, but there's so much on social media that you can gravitate to that'll take you in another direction. That yeah, I think time for young people should be limited on social media, and they should be able to go out and go into the park. I don't even think my grandkids know how to go to a park. I don't know if they think I don't think they don't even know how to go to a park.
You wouldn't even be able to recognize
No,
half.
they wouldn't know how to recognize it. What's the swing? What is that for? You know, you know. So but that's
Not the movie.
yeah, but that's where we are. In society, we're there. You know.
Goodness. Well, my last question for you: if you had just one superpower, what would it be, and what would it do?
Um, I think the superpower I would want to have is telepathy. Yeah.
I hear that runs in the family. No.
It does. Well, some people do. Some people say it do. I don't know. But I think I would want to be able to read people's minds. You know, be not to use it in a negative way, but to try to understand. Where they're coming from. Because a lot of people are unable to voice what they're thinking and what they're feeling. you know and then they give you these personas of themselves that they want everybody to think they are, but I want to really know who you are, really who you are. And I think that's one superpower I would like to have, was to be able to get to know a person, you know without them having to put on a phony act or a phony, to be able to let their hair down, let themselves be, known that way, and not use it negatively but positively. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I was mistaken when you said telepathy. I was thinking of telekinesis.
Oh, okay.
I forgot. I'm silly. I messed it up.
Yes, hey, I might be saying it wrong too. I don't know. Sometimes telepathy. I don't know. I thought that
You
was
said
what
it
it
right.
was.
You said it right. I, I just caught myself. No, but I want to thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an amazing, amazing interview. I really loved getting to know more about you that I didn't even know. I was thinking I was going to be sharing you with the world, but I got to learn a little bit more about you myself. So this was great. Definitely. Thank you for.
Yes, I appreciate it, and I'm just so proud of you. And you look amazing. I can't stop looking at you. You look just amazing. 30 looks good on you. 30 looks good on you. And yes, keep the confidence. You were always very confident anyway. But I think this new 30, this new you, has brought about a change, different change. And change is always good. Yeah, change is good.
It is. It is. Well, I thank you all so much for joining me for another episode of Lynn Spins. I'm Lynn Ferguson, also known as Lynn Tennyson, your host here on the show, and I welcome you next time. We jump in Lynn's Bits.
Bye.
Bye.